Hi, neighbors. It's good to see you here in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Happy spring, happy May. Let me just get my coat hung up and get my sweater on. All right. Okay. Well, hello, neighbor, and welcome to our new sermon series, The Gospel in Mr. Rogers. That's right, Mr. Rogers of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Fred McFeely Rogers hosted a children's television show on PBS for almost 3 decades. Maybe you grew up watching Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Maybe your children did, or your grandchildren. Nowadays, there is a PBS cartoon show, Daniel Tiger, that is based on Fred Rogers' favorite puppet, and it continues his legacy. If you didn't know, Fred Rogers was an ordained Presbyterian minister, and station WQED public television out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was his parish. Every day he would meet his young flock through the medium of television. It was his actual ministerial assignment. I loved watching Mr. Rogers as a young parent. He was not there to dispense rules and lessons. Mr. Rogers was there to be a grace note in children's lives and the lives of those who were learning to love the child within. Sometimes those grace notes were in the form of the songs he wrote. And so through the next several weeks, we are going to have a little fun as we listen for the grace notes of Mr. Rogers' music. Fred Rogers understood the power of God's grace, and he also knew how to shower affirmation and nurture the yearning for us to be ever more our likable selves. Jesus said the greatest commandment was to love God with all your being and to love your neighbor as yourself. As yourself. Discovering the truth about ourselves is a lifetime's work, but it's worth the effort, wrote Rogers. And I believe that the more we know who we are as God's beloved, the closer we grow to God and to one another. Now, Mr. Rogers was not a saint. He was not a martyr. He was not to be worshipped, and he would recoil at that thought. He was a soft-spoken, thoughtful Christian man who was a loving husband and a devoted father and son, and called by God to ministry. Through his life and his ministry, he felt the children watching Mr. Rogers' neighborhood in a different place, a better place about themselves in the world. And though he never specifically spoke of God on his show, he did as St. Francis wrote. He preached the gospel at all times and, if necessary, used words. Mr. Rogers' life preached the gospel by helping us learn to love ourselves and our neighbors. And so we invite you over the next several weeks to suspend your adult skepticism and remember that Jesus said, "Allow the children to come to me. Don't forbid them, because the kingdom of heaven belongs to people like these children." It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Come along with us and learn more about loving yourself and loving God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Let's go. And now, Kyler's going to sing "It's You I Like," one of Mr. Rogers' songs.
It's you I like. It's not the things you wear. It's not the way you do your hair. But it's you I like. The way you are right now. The way down deep inside you. Not the things that hide you. Not your toys. They're just beside you. But it's you I like. Every part of you. Your skin, your eyes, your feelings too. Whether old or new. I hope that you'll remember. Even when you're feeling blue. that it's you I like. It's you yourself. It's you. It's you I like.
Well, good morning, neighbor.
Good morning.
And good morning, neighbors. We're so glad to invite you.
We, as we begin this journey with Mr. Rogers, we thought we would set up our own living room to be able to have conversations with you.
Yeah. So how you doing?
You know, I'm doing okay. There are days where I'm really good, and there are some days where I'm a little more sad. How are you doing, Barb?
Well, I'm just a crabby mess.
Really?
Yeah, I've been irritable, and I've said to myself, what's wrong with you? I mean, you know, hubby and I have been married for 42 years, and we still get along well, and we've used this time to really kind of unpack still from our move 2 years ago, and that's been good. But I said, why am I so daggone crabby?
So what did you come up with? Why are you having such a hard time?
Well, because I realized I've had 51 days with me.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm tired of being alone, with just me.
That is the hard part of isolation, is realizing that you are with just you, and there isn't anybody else to buffer that.
No, there isn't. And so I decided I just really needed to give myself a pep talk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay to be crabby, but I don't want to live in the crabby place.
You're right.
Yeah. So, I started thinking about what are some of the God moments as you were, preaching the last couple of weeks. What are some of the God moments I've had over the last couple of weeks? And that really sort of helped lift me out of the crabby place a little bit.
Yeah. Finding places of gratitude are so important, especially in this time where you just kind of feel the weight of the world and you just feel crabby. That's a great word for it.
Yeah. But one of the places where I've connected with my neighbors, and it's just it's a crazy funny thing, is at 8 o'clock every night when people go outside and howl.
Oh gosh, yes, that is a huge thing at our house too.
Yeah,
is
and
going out to howl.
they were really howling last night.
Yeah.
Really at it, and the dogs in the neighborhood.
Sometimes we have a sick wolf in our house. It sounds very sick, but the howling is so much fun to be able to join together in that community.
I know. And then the other thing was taking the dogs for a walk.
Yeah.
And I kept seeing these little painted rocks along the way, and they would say things like love or faith or perseverance or words like that. And, that kind of helped lift my spirits as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So great to see those moments for sure.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster of emotions, and I think we've all been affected by it over these last 51 days. And I sometimes think this is an experience that we're not really going to understand until we're way past it.
Yes, for sure.
Throughout this season of now safer at home, I keep hearing the words of Jesus echoing to love God with all your heart, mind, your being, and to love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Love yourself. That's hard.
It's really hard.
When I was a younger mother, I was still growing up myself. I was trying to be a good parent, but at the same time, I was immature. I was emotionally immature. I had a childish faith, I had a shallow relationship with God, and I didn't really grasp that I was lovable because I didn't know who I was. And I didn't really like, much less love me. I had, like so many of us, some experiences as a child that scarred me. And as a result, I think I acted out that pain as a teenager. And then I found myself, as an adult, married to a good man with a beautiful child. Remember, I wasn't really connecting to my faith, and yet I thought, well, we have a child now, and we need to bring her into a church and raise her in that community so she could grow up to be a decent human being. But what I realized, I was seeking more. I was seeking an anchor. I was seeking some kind of plumb line. I was seeking community. I began to hear some good news, though I didn't really recognize it as such. I began to hear good news about me on the words of a TV show. God was pursuing me through a show that my toddler watched every day while she was eating lunch, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Listen for Jesus' second great commandment in these overarching themes of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Love your neighbor. Mr. Roger helped us with our relationships. He helped us to wonder and to grow and to get ready for new experiences and new people. And love yourself. To feel good about who we are as God's beloved. He helped us come to understand ourselves through our feelings. He talked to us honestly about difficult subjects. Mr. Rogers would come into households across the country every day and preach the gospel to the youngest, I think, knowing that some grown-ups were overhearing. Mr. Rogers said, discovering the truth about ourselves is a lifetime's work, but it's worth the effort. I know that to be true. I know that is especially true because the more we embrace ourselves as a beloved child of God, the more receptive we become to the belovedness of others. The more we discover the truth about ourselves as God's beloved, the deeper our relationship grows with God. Reminds me of Nicodemus coming to Jesus in the middle of the night. This learned, deeply faithful Pharisee comes to Jesus seeking more information, more understanding about who Jesus was. And that conversation eventually deepened Nicodemus' life. He was watching Jesus, and something was changing within him. So much so that he was one of the two present at the garden tomb after the crucifixion with 75 pounds of myrrh and aloe to anoint Jesus' broken body. Who are the people who helped you become who you are? Who loved you into being? Who showed you Jesus? As Cody preached stories of Jesus' sightings in the past 2 weeks, I asked myself, how has Jesus come to me in my life? Rarely it was a preacher or a teacher. We think it will be someone who holds a position, who's studied, who's perhaps eloquent, who has intellectual prowess and the courage to lead. We don't really think of someone like gentle, caring Fred Rogers of our lives. But you see, our way isn't God's way. Listen to this story from the Hebrew Bible as Samuel anoints David. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." But Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me." And the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate." Samuel did what the Lord said. And when he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. They asked, "Do you come in peace?" Samuel replied, "Yes, in peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. So consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me." And then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. And when they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, "Well, surely the Lord's anointed stands before the Lord." But the Lord said to Samuel, Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Jesse then had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, "Nor has the Lord chosen this one." Jesse had 7 sons pass before Samuel. But Samuel said to him, "The Lord has not chosen these." So he asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" "They're still the youngest," Jesse answered. "He is tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health and a fine appearance and handsome features. And then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint. This is the one." I am guessing that Samuel was surprised by God's choice of young David. I mean, the other brothers, they were older and stronger. They were tall, dark, and handsome, more experienced. And David was off playing with the sheep and writing poetry. Sometimes we function like Samuel, thinking we know what we do not know, thinking that God sees and thinks and knows as we know, and so we know who God anoints. We mistake external position and power and possessions as the way to decide what makes a person of value. And David, what must David have thought? Sometimes we can't see or appreciate what others see and appreciate in us, but God does. Fred Rogers said it this way to 3- and 4-year-olds. "It's you I like. It's not the clothes you wear." Fred Rogers instilled sacred worth. Who were the people who helped you become who you are? Who are the people who loved you, knowing you are of sacred worth, and poured a horn of oil over your head, just as Samuel did David? Michael Yaconelli writes in his book, Dangerous Wonder, "Grace is difficult to believe and difficult to accept. We want so desperately to believe that God loves us unconditionally, yet we keep adding conditions." Okay, fine, we say. Once we accept God's grace, we better get our act together. We had better be perfect, or we won't be worthy of his grace. We just cannot believe God can grace even our failures. There it is. We cannot believe God can grace even our failures. So we feel more uncomfortable with our uncomfortableness. We measure our worth in unachievable expectations of ourselves. And that's where the neighbor part comes in. You see, it's not just us loving our neighbors, it's our neighbors loving us too. It's the reciprocal, brotherly, sisterly love. And yes, this is one of the reasons that virtual community is hard. But remember, we are all in this together because we are the community called church. For on the days when our failures have us dragging a ball and chain behind us and it feels like the devil is picking at us, you're not worth anything. The community of Christ comes alongside us to pick us up and dust us off and help us start again. We are all in this together, and we have been from the start. Ever since Mary said to Peter and the disciples, "I have just seen the risen Lord," we are together. And we will continue to be together long after COVID-19 is in the history books. Yes, the time will come again, someday, hopefully soon, when we can shake hands and offer a hug and laugh and weep and pray together in the same room. But for the time being, The work of ministry calls us to extend ourselves to others who are in our small realms with the same sense of love and community that we share here in this wonderful faith family. Who can you anoint with the oil of grace and affirmation? Who needs to hear the word of God through you? One of my favorite clips from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is the meeting between Jeff Erlanger and Mr. Rogers. And this morning I want to share a little portion of that with you, along with the memories of Jeff's appearance on the show by his parents.
Mr. Rogers?
Hey, Jeff. I'm glad to see you.
Hi.
Thank you very much for coming by. Can you tell my friends what it is that made you need this wheelchair?
Sure. Well, when I was about 7 months old, I had a tumor, and it broke the nerves to tell my hands and legs what to do.
I see.
And I got a wheelchair when I was 4 years old.
That was your first one when you were 4.
Uh-huh.
He told Jeff before they started that they would have a chat and then sing a song together.
I think he said we might sing a song. I remember because I was sort of surprised. Well, he's going to start singing a song. Well, this is totally not even what song.
It's you I like. It's not the things you wear. It's not the way you do your hair. But it's you I like. The way you are right now, the way down deep inside you, not the things that
I do.
not your fancy chair, that's just beside you. But it's you I like, every part of you, your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether old or new. I hope that you remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like, it's you yourself, it's you, it's you I like. And it is you I like, Jeff.
Thanks.
And there must be times when you do feel blue.
Uh-huh.
I'm not feeling blue right now, though.
Me neither.
I'm so glad that you came today.
Thanks.
I remember asking one of the staff people that was there, well, what do you think? Did it go okay? So, don't. This is good. This is good.
He had his surgery, he survived. Certainly Mr. Rogers had an impact on who Jeff became, his sense of self.
Years later, when Fred Rogers was celebrated by the television industry, guess who came to present the award? Jeff Erlanger. Nobody else can live the life you live. And even though no human being is perfect, we always have the chance to bring what's unique about us, to live in a redeeming way. The grace of God says to you and me, I can make last place more significant than first place. I will use prostitutes to teach others about gratitude, sacred worth. I will use lepers as examples of cleanliness, sacred worth. I will take men who persecute the church and make them pillars of the church, sacred worth. I will take the dead and give them life. I will take unchurched fishermen and make them fishers of people, sacred worth. God's grace does not exist to make us perfect. God's grace exists to point people to live like no other love they've ever known, a love that colors outside the lines, a love that reminds us that we are loved and then grows us into being that person. and living life gratefully and faithfully, just as God intended for you and me. There is something special in each of us. Something special in you and me. And here's the thing, God may never call on you to be the king of Israel like David, but you are as valuable to God as one lost sheep, that lost coin. God seeks you and calls you and knows that you are uniquely you. There is something special in you. There is a spark of the holy in you. So in those dark moments when you feel lost or alone or unlovable or unredeemable or even just crabby, remember, even when we are apart, we are still together and always have been. You are loved, found, redeemed by the one who left the 99 to find you. You are of sacred worth. And that's what Fred Rogers hoped to convey every day in the neighborhood. I want to end this morning, instead of with a final hymn, with a video reminding us that we are still together. Our thanks to April and Casey Kaufman for conceptualizing and creating this lovely piece using the song, You Will Be Found, from the Broadway musical, Dear Evan Hansen. You will see friends in this video, and at the end, we also lift up friends who are now fully alive in God's eternal presence. It's you God likes, because you are of sacred